try.
Hello, guys. This is New DM Ariel, and today it's a Saturday morning on the long Memorial Day weekend, the holiday weekend. Well, it's not really a holiday for me because I'm working Monday morning, but the today I thought on this beautiful Saturday that I would try something different and do a reaction video. I've been watching a lot of reaction videos for a lot of the shows that I like and that I used to watch back in the day, such as Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Angel and Firefly, those type of shows. And I find that I'm really enjoying how other people react to the shows. They will voice their opinion, and they most of the time, I'd say 100% of the time or 99% of the time, they've never seen the show, and so they're coming in fresh, and it's really interesting to see how they react to the episodes when I've already seen the whole show, sometimes multiple times. Some episodes I know by heart, and it's and you know where the dramatic moments are going to happen, and you know what's going to happen from show to show, but they don't. And I find that a very interesting experiment for some reason. I really enjoy watching people's reactions to the show. So I thought I'd do a reaction of my own, and this being primarily a RPG D&D channel, I would go ahead and do a reaction to the old D&D cartoon that was available in the 80s, and let the nostalgia wash over for those of us who remember. Although I gotta admit, I never really paid that much attention to the D&D cartoon when it first came out because it was at a weird time on Saturday mornings. We used to get up really early, grab cereal like all the kids, and watch stuff like the Smurfs. But D&D came on later in the day, so by the time the show was on, I had to really watch like Spider-Man and other cartoons that I was interested in. And by that time, I just wanted to go out and play and get the day started. So I never sat down through hardly remember any of the D&D cartoons. So this will be nostalgic in the sense that I remember the show being on my TV set, but sort of a fresh reaction by in it within itself. And I'm not going to show the whole episode, just bits and pieces. This is the pilot episode, the first episode called "The Night of No Tomorrow," and because of copyright, I don't want this video to be flagged, so I'll show bits and pieces and react to it. So, without any further ado, let's go ahead and get started with D&D, the cartoon from the 80s, episode 1, "The Night of No Tomorrow." All right, so a lot happens in the introduction to the cartoon, and I remember one unique thing about this cartoon is that it didn't really have a theme song per se. It was just sort of recapped a lot of what happened in the introduction to the show. For example, the very first thing is there's a bunch of kids who go to this carnival and they get on this D&D ride, but they get transported into a different dimension or like a fantasy world, D&D type world, and they meet the dungeon master, and the dungeon master turns them into D&D characters. And what's interesting is the different classes or professions that they give the kids. Like one of them is a barbarian, and then another one is a wizard or magic user, I guess, and then they have a ranger. But the funny thing is they also have like the acrobat, and the cavalier is interesting. Like one of the kids turns into a cavalier, and that cavalier class actually started with the Unearthed Arcana. Here's my Advanced Dungeons and Dragons first edition Unearthed Arcana supplement book, and that's when the Cavalier class first became available that I remember. So it's interesting that early on they had a selection of classes, but they didn't go with a traditional class like a necessarily like well, they have the barbarian, but they don't have like a thief or anything like that. Instead, they have the cavalier and they have the acrobat. I don't exactly remember if the acrobat was introduced in Unearthed Arcana or was model. I know the ranger was included in Unearthed Arcana, and it was a controversial decision to have updates at the time to some of these different character class. But at any range, That's where we first get introduced to the Cavalier character or class, and they incorporated it into the show. And also, there's a lot that happens in the introduction. They meet the dungeon master, they go into the world, they get their classes, and then right away we're shown their nemesis makes an appearance, which is a evil type sorcerer by the name of uh, I forget his name. It'll come up. But the guy was voiced by the same guy that voiced the Optimus Prime in the Transformers cartoons. Um, Venger, that's his name, Venger, and Venger was voiced by that famous voice actor who also did a multitude of roles. His most famous being, of course, in the Transformers and all the Transformer franchises, and where he played Optimus Prime. And then also they wrote right away the first thing they throw out them. You could think of them as first level characters because they don't have any experience using any of their powers, but they're put in a life and death situation where they meet up against Tiamat, and Tiamat is a pretty formidable opponent to say the least to go right up against. It's like a four-headed multi-headed dragon. If you play fifth edition, you're pretty familiar with Tiamat because there's a Tiamat expand or campaign, Tiamat campaign that is available for fifth edition rules.
There! It's Tiamat the dragon!
Tiamat the dragon!
Who dares awaken me? All right! Leave her to me! Bobby, don't! She's indestructible! You little fool!
Bobby's foolish and rushes out to combat without any help. So after the barbarian rages out and tries to strike at the dragon on his own. Obviously, he gets out of it with some help from his friends, and they talk to this little unicorn that's kind of he befriended and it's kind of following them on their adventures. Now, I hate the little unicorn because it just follows the trend. I think his name is Uni or whatever, but he follows the trend of 80s cartoons where they try to have a cute mascot type, like a creature that was cute, and that younger kids could identify while they're watching or would like while they're watching the show. So, two things. It begs the question: who is this cartoon made for? Really? I mean, it's written. This pilot episode is written by Mark Evanier, who is a very famous uh, he's written some comics, I'm sure, and some D&D material, fantasy type narratives. So he's a well-known author, but he's not. He's tasked with creating this adventure, but who is the target audience? Because at this time, I think this cartoon was in the early 80s, 80, 83 or something, 82 around then, and maybe even later. But the point is, who is the target audience at this time? The what was happening is they were trying to rebrand the Advanced Dungeons and Dragons IP so that it would be a little bit more family friendly or more commercial friendly. Because the whole idea of having a show, a cartoon, a lot of times is to tie in the merchandise. Obviously, the toys and the action figures. They did make an action figure line out of this cartoon with some of the main characters like Venger, and the well, that was another weird thing. It's like the action card, the action figures didn't really match because they never made the kids or they didn't make the kids as focal points. They just had the character classes such as the Cavalier or the Knight and the Wizard. So, and they did have, some of the characters from the show, which kind of didn't make all that whole lot of sense. But I digress. The point is, I don't know who the target audience is supposed to be. Is it supposed to be little kids that they want to engage in Dungeons and Dragons, maybe when they grow up, because everybody that I knew that was playing Dungeons and Dragons was a little bit older, in their early teen years for sure. I think I picked it up in like mid 80s, and I by that time I was already in what they call junior high school at the time, right, a couple of grades before high school. And so there were the older people that, or older kids that I knew that were playing the game. None, little kids were not really into D&D, and I don't know if they were trying to get them to engage with the property. I'm sure that was part of it, get them to buy the toys. But there was a definite push to get the property sort of um, uh, kind of make it more palpable, appealing. Yeah, more appealing to family friendly. Say, because there was like the whole time where they had the satanic scare in the 80s, and D&D got kind of dragged into that whole satanic scare because of the fact that there was magic and there was demons and dragons and devils, and so they wanted to get away from that whole um, way of thinking, of characterizing or pigeonholing D&D into that whole mindset, which they found, I'm sure, not wholesome or not family friendly, and definitely not a way to go move the IP forward. So one of the big themes in this cartoons, or one of the themes that they're exploring, um, is the relationship between all the kids, but also what their main goal, how to get back home. So it's the same kind of the same old, or similar to like the Gilligan's Island, where they need to go home. And but they're trying to find their way home, but they have all these obstacles before they can reach that goal. And the Star Trek Voyager, where the Voyager ship is stranded in the Delta Quadrant. So it's not something. It's not a premise that hasn't been tried before, but it does lead to some narrative obstacles for the protagonists, and that's okay. So what happens is they the dungeon master appears, and he tells them that they need to go to this village, because this village has a long history. Um, it was destroyed or taken over by evil forces, and so they have to go there. And so they set out to try to find the village. He tells them to go north, basically, and they follow his directions. But the dungeon master has this very uh, this very annoying habit of just giving them kind of like sort of they the Cavalierian complains, hey, just give it to us straight, man. Why you always have to talk in riddles? But he doesn't. He just kind of talks in riddles all the times and gives them just a little bit of information. So this time around, he tells them to go north and try to find the village, and so they do that. And on their way to the village, they get lost because there's all the signs that tell them to go this direction and to go the another direction. At some point, the signs don't make any sense, and then one of them says, "Oh, look, it does make sense. You just have to look. We forgot to look up." And it turns out that there's this big castle in the sky, and it's the castle is uh, inhabited by Merlin. So they go in there and they actually meet the famous wizard Merlin, um, which is kind of on the nose. I mean, I guess you have to have the audience identify with, with the fantasy setting. So what, that's kind of trite. We're gonna have a wizard. It's gonna be Merlin, right? Okay. So they meet Merlin, and he basically says, "Well, I can't help you find your way home. I can't do that. I mean, I can't send you home right away, but I can point you in the right direction, or I can tell you what you have to do next, type of thing." And so that's sort of the conversation that they have with with Merlin. All right. So what happens next is they uh, they encounter Tiamat the dragon again. He makes his second appearance, and this time around, they don't have just one or two of them fight. They'll kind of all team up, and there's a pretty cool action sequence where they're fighting against the dragon, and they use their different powers to hold them back. Like the ranger is shooting his magic arrows, and they have there's this big trap door to like a dungeon, and they all work together and they manage to trap the dragon in. They trick him into falling into this trap door, and then they lock the trap door, so he's trapped in the dungeon. Um, and uh, and then Merlin says that uh, he's going to talk to Preston's talking to Merlin. Preston's the name of the little wizard guy, and that's kind of another confusing thing about this cartoon is like they talk they all keep saying, oh, Preston this and Preston that, but I don't know if that's his real name. I doubt that his real name is Preston the wizard, because Bobby's the barbarian. They say Bobby, so it's kind of confusing me. I don't know if that's his name or not, but anyway, Preston is he's given an offer that he might not be able to refuse by Merlin, saying that he's older now, and he's getting up in age, and he's looking for somebody to take his place, and he wants an assistant so that he can teach him all his magic. And this sounds is appealing to Preston. And it's not. It seems kind of out of character because he gives him a choice. He said, you can stay, but if you stay, you can, it's gonna take your whole life to learn for me to teach you all this magic that I know. And he decides to stay, and I was like, what? I thought the whole idea was for them to try to get home, to find a way to get home. But it turns out that maybe that's what he was thinking the whole time, because at some point Merlin's working and he has this big book of spells, and he said, okay, I gotta go away for a while, but all the secrets are in the book, and so Preston gets this idea, oh, well, maybe there's a way that I can get us back home by using the spells in the book. So he does a big spell, and it backfires on him, and it turns into this big giant dragon. And he's like running away, and he's like calling for Merlin, and he's like, "Oh, Merlin, you gotta help me. You gotta help me because I didn't know what I was doing. I was trying to get us home, but there's this big dragon that spawned." And I gotta say, it's a pretty cool reveal at this point. I didn't really see it coming, but it turns out because the dungeon master told them to look out for Venger, and the one clue that he gave him was like, "Oh, beware of Venger because you'll recognize him because he has white hair. You'll see his white hair." And but Merlin doesn't have any hair. He's like lost all his hair, and he even says at some point, "Oh, the one thing I can't do is I can't grow my hair back." But he's holding a white hair the whole time, right? So it's easy to put two and two together after a while. He says, "Oh, he keeps holding this white hair." And I think the kids even refer to the white hair, but they're not smart enough to say, "Oh, white hair, that's the clue. That's the clue we were warned against." So it turns out that Merlin was Venger the whole time, and he tricked Preston into going into the book so that he could, while he was thinking that he could do a spell to get them back home. It turns out that the whole time Merlin, aka Venger, was tricking him into getting uh, the dragons to come back, because there's a whole bunch of dragons that come, and not just one, but there's a whole bunch of dragons, and they're going to take over the village. So it turns out the whole time that Merlin wasn't Merlin. Merlin's been dead for thousands of years, he says, and it was Venger all along. So I think that was a pretty good plot twist. I didn't really see it coming, and it moves the narrative forward. Um, and so we have to see how they're going to get out of it now.
Mayor, I think I know how to stop the dragons, but we'll need horses.
In the stables, that way.
Come on, Uni, jump!
Just let Uni die. Let the dragons
This is
roast
not the
Uni.
worst of it. The legend says the final assault will come soon, and our town will be completely destroyed.
All right, so what happens at this point? How does this 21-minute episode end? Well, basically, at this point of the story, they're chilling in the in the village of Helix, while Preston stays behind in Merlin slash Venger's castle, and the other kids are in the village, or kind of hanging out with the townspeople, as you do, and they're all talking about how how they're trying to strategize, and then I think they're talking to the mayor of the village, And they go to like a fortune teller, and the fortune teller says, "Oh no," because she can see that the dragons are on their way. The dragons are on their way, and so the kids are all freaked out, and they're like, "Well, that's." At first, they're like, "Oh well, that's no problem because we can hook up with Merlin again." Um, but then they sort of start piecing it together because they're like, the mayor was like, or somebody in the town is like, "Merlin, he's been dead for like years," and they're like, "How can that be? We just saw him. He said he was 70 years old." And so we he's alive. But then they start to realize that it probably wasn't Merlin that they met at all, because it finally dawns on them that Dungeon Master had told them that to beware Avenger, and they would recognize him by the white hair, and they're like, "Oh, he was holding a white hair the whole time," you know. We thought he meant the hair color, blah blah blah. Yeah. Um, they might be powerful, but they're not junior detectives. It takes them quite a while to piece that one together, and then they freak out because they're like, "Oh no, Preston is there at the Merlin Avengers place alone, and we got to go rescue him and stuff." And so they're like, "Yeah." The whole town goes to hell. The dragons are in there destroying the town, and they say, "Can we get some horses?" And they get on horses and they ride and get to the castle faster. And once they get to the castle, then they find Preston, and he doesn't have his magic hat. Oh, that's one thing that Venger said to him. He took his hat, and he's like, that's all he wanted. He wanted his hat to add him to his own powers. So basically, Venger is like the Borg. The Borg from Star Trek. They want to add, they want to be perfect, and they want to add your technological advance or whatever you can give to them from your society to their own, so that they can conquer the universe. Same thing. Venger just wants magical artifacts. He wants the wizard's hat and the barbarians May club and whatever magical artifacts that the dungeon master gave to him, which kind of doesn't make any sense to me because he's this big, powerful sorcerer. So why does he need like this apprentice wizard's hat to add to his powers? And can he just make his own club? A barbarian's club is probably not hard to whip up a spell. The whole thing doesn't make sense. But that's what he's after. He's after the artifacts, and I guess that sort of evokes Dungeons and Dragons, because if you ever played the tabletop game, you're adventuring and trying to you fight monsters, but you also try to gain experience. And in order to get experience and to fight the monsters, a lot of times you get equipment. So you get like a better staff or a better sword or whatever treasure. So I guess they're trying to evoke that. But narratively speaking, it doesn't make any sense because Venger shouldn't need this stuff. But anyway, that's what he's after. He's not really after the kids. Could care less about the kids. All he wants is their magic artifacts that they have, so that he could add it to his own power. And so they're trying to. The wizard says, "Oh, I don't have my hat. It was Venger all alone." But the other kids already figured it out, so they got to figure out what to do about it. And somebody gets a brilliant idea of let's Tiamat's still locked up in the dungeon, so let's let the dragon out because Venger's afraid of this dragon. He can't deal with this dragon, powerful dragon. And the Cavalier, whose real name is Eric, and by the way, he's kind of like the butt of all their jokes because he's kind of a rich, spoiled. He's not supposed to be a very likable character. He's always whining and complaining about everything really. And he's kind of he talks about his parents limo and stuff like that. He's supposed to be a spoiled brat, and nobody likes him, but somehow they were friends. But anyway, he's like, "Oh, Eric is like, you're gonna let the dragon out? Don't we have enough problems?" But then he's overruled, and they're like, "Shut up and help us." So they open up the door where they have the cellar where they have the dungeon where the dragon is, and they let the dragon out. And then there's this big fight between sort of a short fight really between Tiamat and Venger. And Venger's like, "Okay, I'm out of here. You guys win this time, but we're not gonna deal with the dragon." So he's peace out. And so they they're able to get rid of Venger that way. Can't remember how the dragon what happens to the dragon when he flies away. I don't know. It's kind of just sort of like a way for them to end the episode and to not to have to deal with Venger until the next one. And then after that, they go the Preston's like, oh, I was never meant to. I always wanted to go back home with you guys. I didn't mean to stay with Merlin. I just thought that if I stuck around, I could learn enough magic or some way for us to get back home. And like that makes sense now. And so they're like, well, you know what? You are, but he's saying, I'm not a very good wizard, and I'll never be a very good wizard. Oh, but the town of Helix or the village was still under attack and being destroyed by the dragons. So at the end, he does a spell and he tries to do a spell to rescue the village, which he does. All the dragons disappear and he rescues the village. So he's like this big hero. So that's part of the lesson. I guess one lesson in the episode is you have to have confidence. He really doesn't have any confidence in his wizard skills. And why should he? I mean, damn it, he's level 1. And he doesn't, he hasn't been doing it very long. But somehow he manages to save the town by himself. And that doesn't make a lot of sense either. It's like, I guess he stayed behind and maybe he had enough time to go through the Merlin slash Venger's book and learn enough spells to learn enough about magic. But he didn't have a whole lot of time to do that. I guess I don't know how long they were at the celebration at the village, and so he stayed behind. So maybe he had enough time to learn it. I don't know. The point is that he saves the village, and they're like, "Oh, you're a hero there," and so we should go back. They don't know how to go back home yet, but we should go back to the village and just kind of celebrate because they all think you're a big hero. And they're like, "Okay, yeah, that's true." So they go back, and then uh they're all riding the horses, but Eric, the cavalier, who's the brunt of the joke, says, "Oh, I don't have a horse. I need my own. He's all entitled, so he's like, I need my own steed. I'm not gonna ride with anyone. Oh yeah, because they're like ride with us, but he's like, no, I need my own steed, and I'm not gonna ride with anyone. And I saw this one coming from a mile away. So the wizard pulls out his hat and he goes, okay, and he conjures up a cow, which is the same cow that he had conjured up earlier in the episode when he was trying to do some magic, but they were trying to say he was not a good wizard, and so he didn't do it correctly, so he got a cow. Oh, that's what it was. They asked for food and they wanted hamburgers, but he got a cow instead. Ha ha. And so they all go full circle, and it's not this is not a good reveal. We know that he's gonna bring. Indeed, he does. He conjures up the cow, and they're like, "Okay, you can ride this back to town," and they all laugh at him. So I guess that's going to be a ongoing gag or a reoccurring theme that Eric the Cavalier is kind of an asshole, pardon my French, and nobody likes him, and so they're going to make fun of him the whole time. Um, and then they'll ride back to town, and that's the end of the episode. So that's pretty much the night of No Tomorrow. Is it good? I think it's good. I don't know if I looked it up, and this episode was made in 1983. That's when the show started, and I at that time I was 13 years old. I don't know if 13-year-old me would enjoy watching this show. It's a little bit because I wasn't like I said I wasn't really into D&D until like a year or two later. So people that are younger than at that age, I don't think were really into the game, so I don't know if they would be into the cartoon too much, just for the lore or for the magic. But they were trying something that would be good family fare, and that would, like I said, put a good image on the brand, which didn't really have it because of the satanic scare and all the other things that were going on. There were a bunch of parents groups. Oh, and there were some suicides happening, and there's society always looks for a scapegoat. So they scapegoated Dungeons and Dragons because they didn't really know what it was. And so role playing games were not really popular at the time, but because they had witches and they had spells and they had devils, all that fantasy stuff, then they were saying turning people, some people were like turning kids evil, just like the comics in the 50s. They burned all the comics all the horror comics because of that. So it's the same deal. Or the video games in the 80s, oh, there's a mass shooting. The guy happened to play video games, so correlation. But correlation does not equal causation, as we know. But people always jump to those conclusions, and they need something to fight, or to blame it on. Even to this day, Donald Trump, was like saying, oh, or this, this. I think he was railing against video games. Well, at one time, they're evil. Kids shouldn't be into this violent game, and they're all violent. It's always the same thing. Nobody accepts the social evils. They just blame it on something else, and that's what happened to Dungeons and Dragons during the '80s. So this was kind of an attempt to sanitize it and to bring the IP to the masses and to for have it something family friendly, and also to sell some toys because that's what it comes to, sell some merchandise. Capitalism. Capitalism is a great thing. Well, thank you guys for watching and checking out. That's all I have for you guys today. The first episode of D&D. If you like this content, I might do more. Just let me know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and to hit the like button if you like it. And I will talk to you guys next time.